Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Part one of the OC finale. Here we go.
The reunion.
Reunion, yes, not the finale. Oh God, if they would have made that finale multiple parts, I would have. It was not worthy of that. Let's just say. Part one of the reunion. Overall, liked it. I'm not sure how we're getting to the point where Andy and Gina agreed that it was happy, like they ended on like a happy note. Not the vibes I'm feeling at this point,
No,
but I'm guessing we've got 3 parts, so we've got 2 more to make some resolution. You guys will probably like. I'm gonna say this again, but we've talked about it before. I've had enough. If I like one thing to Bravo as it relates to OC, I really don't need to know about their GI issues anymore. I feel like I know way too much about these women, when they poop, who hasn't pooped, what they're doing to help their poop. Like,
yes.
I
The
have kids.
conversation they get when they travel, like
Yes.
enough with the shit talk. And like, I just couldn't care for it. So I like that Andy was like, what? Are you like in peril, Shannon?
Yeah.
Like, are
He's like, "Well,
you
I've got
going to
multiple
shit
things.
yourself?
It's gonna be a whole." I'm like, "Look, I have kids. Like, we've talked about poop and bodily functions do not gross me out. These are grown ass women. We've got to stop talking about our poop. Like, let's just move
I
on."
would have just like excused myself. Like, there's no announcement. No need to announce it. But whatever, they're giving us their lives. This is reality TV, I suppose. They're giving us
I
too
mean,
much.
yeah, let's from now going forward too, let's have their menstruation schedules just in the corner. Like, it's just like, where are we drawing the line? I don't need to know about the pooping constantly.
No.
I gotta say, Heather Dubrow with her, like, they're like, what are your intentions? Let's all set intentions, which when Andy does this, it's like, Andy, you are not trying to set intentions. You are trying to stir some shit, but we love you for it. Heather Dubrow says that her intention is to walk out as friends with almost everyone while staring directly at Katie.
She came in like, it's interesting to watch this. We all know this was like no secret revealed on Jersey with the whole meetings before reunion.
Right.
But clearly a meeting really took place because the way that Emily and Heather are so linked up against Katie was like, well, I mean, she talked to you about Pact. Like, how bad did it get? I mean, I guess she did mention Emily's kids, but like in the grand scheme of all the things that happen on Housewives, I'm just like, you guys are going in hard on her.
Like, was this worth it? And let's not for Gina was at that secret meeting too,
Oh,
because
yes.
like I think they're being the bigger voices here, but Gina was like kind of chiming in, and there was a moment where Gina and Heather kind of like lock eyes, and like I think Gina kind of gives her a wink, and then
Yes. And then
Heather blows her an air kiss, and I was like, oh, that's not just cute. Like, that's my like girly across on the other sofa. That's like, I don't think it was like a signal or a secret code,
no,
but I
but
think it
it was
was
like,
kind of
we're
like,
doing
we're
good.
doing it.
Like,
We're
we're
doing it.
doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing good. Unless it's like Katie, honey. If you're gonna be on Housewives, and as she this quickly a quick learning lesson, you have to have your receipts, proof, timeline. You have to have all that shit in check. You're being called out in multiple areas, the inconsistencies from, Gina asking about the house that you lived in. Were you renting? Why did you lie about this? To me, I felt like lawyer Emily truly came out. She's like, let's build a case against Emily, or not, sorry, against Katie and how she's inconsistent in her storytelling. Gina, I want you to mention this. Heather, I want you to mention this. And the whole common thread is how they don't feel like she's trustworthy.
There's always
She
a story.
There's
Yeah.
always a story. And like as viewers, we can see right through it, but it didn't hit in the way I felt like it needed to hit because some of the things that she may have lied about or was inconsistent about as a viewer, I don't care. It does, you know what I mean? Like
Right. Like, it's not,
it didn't land for me.
but also for Katie, like I'll say, like, you can't like texting somebody, like the text, like that's not receipts. Like, I need a little bit more than that, or you're gonna have to share more than just like one small little screenshot snippet. Because you saw something on your like FYP page, like on TikTok. There's just things where I'm like, girl, like you need to get a little bit better on how
Yeah.
you're going to fight with these women. I also really, there were moments like with Shannon and Tamra. I did like how I think Emily and Tamra are obviously like a new forged friendship. There were some seasons where they didn't click necessarily, and now they're like both good. And I think they both understood like we're both really direct and abrasive. So we're going to piss one another off, but we have to understand it's because we're both alike. And I think they've like kind of come to that point. So there were moments where I liked where Emily was like, Tamra, just say you're sorry. Like, you're not going to win this. Just say you're sorry and move on. But there was a moment with Shannon, and maybe it's because like looking in my own life and where I am, people who have had issues with certain substances, but are in like denial of it, I feel like they're always quick to be like, yeah, I went through a bad period, but look at me now. I'm all good. And it's not like, this is a journey. I'm working towards it. I'm still figuring it out. Those are the people who I'm like, oh, I believe they're actually probably going to make it because they're acknowledging like it is a struggle. Doesn't mean they're an alcoholic and can never drink again. They don't know enough. That might be it. Like, I kind of feel like I usually buy that story a little bit more. But when they were talking about Shannon's drinking, Shannon was really quick to be like, and look at where I am today. I've never been better. And I don't know if I would agree with that. And I don't know if I think she's still in a place where she has a good relationship with alcohol.
I do feel like Shannon is queen of telling her the story that she wants to believe, whether it's like actual true or not. She's like, it's almost like if I say it out loud enough, I'm going to
It has to be
it.
true.
It has to be true. I do think, and production brought up all the different points of where Tamra called out that she's an alcoholic, going back like several reunions ago. And I did agree with Emily here in this point of like, you can't bully someone not into drinking. I think Tamra's intentions, her approach was shit, but I do think she did have concern for her friend. I just think she kind of weaponized it against her. And that's like kind of what gave us all the ick. Like, if someone has seriously unwell and like has like a problem, there's, I feel like, ways, talk to your therapist about approaching them and talking to them about it. But the way she's gone on and on with it, it's not working. So I don't know. That part was a little bit interesting to me.
I also feel like it's okay to say like, I feel like I enable you. I can't continue on this friendship until you figure out like your shit. Like, that's totally fine. But yeah, to Emily's point, like, you can't bully her and continue to use it like as like your main reason why you don't like her. You just need to remove yourself from that relationship and kind of be a little bit more aloof. But I thought like that part of it, I was like, okay, like, yes, it's a little heated and dark, but like, I thought we were handling it pretty well. Then it pivots to Katie. I think Katie does kind of like flounder in this. Like, she had a couple things with the paparazzi, how she claimed it was like out there and everyone was talking about it. And she saw it on like TikTok and stuff like that. I get that some of the other women, some of the things they were like the story of Katie, they're like, well, it was everywhere all over social media. So I dug into it. Katie was like, I saw it on TikTok and then texted a friend because like, why wouldn't I? But I don't dig into people. It's like, I don't know. Her story didn't totally match.
Well, and it's like exactly what you're doing. I do remember that photo when it came out. But again, we have our Instagram fan page. We follow several Bravo accounts. Of course, we're going to see it. I remember like other account posted them being papped and everyone like, oh my God.
It was very staged.
It felt very staged, but it's weird. Like, it's like, girl, you saw it on your TikTok because your algorithm is all like, you're snooping into Bravo stuff. And your algorithm is all that. Like, I wish someone would have said that. It doesn't just show up on your FYP page by accident. It's based on the things that you're searching and looking up. Like, everyone,
yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So that didn't hit. I did not like when they started going into this investigation. So Heather like pulls up the fact that's all over everywhere. One, that she's being sued by the idea of tea shots, which, okay. Being sued by that. Then also that she had someone like got into an altercation with someone back in Atlanta, just aggressive driving. There's two sides. And literally, you know, Heather is like quoting it, like putting her on trial, I feel like a little
Heather
bit.
knew a lot about it. Like, Heather was like, no, well, the story you told was, and like, let Katie tell it, but then was like, what really happened was this man was upset that you were texting and driving with your kids in the car. And then he told you like to stop. And then you followed him to his house and like, you were like yelling at him and he started filming you because you were the one that was like making him nervous. And when the cops came, you said he harassed you and they arrested him. And then later realized that like, that wasn't the case. And that's why everything was dropped. Now, Katie's version of it was, that that's not true. The reason why it was dropped is she wasn't even aware that she was supposed to be in court. I agreed. Gina was like, because Katie claimed she was served, but it was served at her ex-husband's house, and he never gave her the documentation. So if you're being served, they actually have to like, it would have to be Katie. Like you've seen the things on like TV shows where it's like somebody goes up to like a food truck and they're like, hey, wow, like you're an awesome chef. Are you Vanessa? And you're like, yeah, I am. And they're like, you've been served. Like they have to confirm that it's Katie. So like I was with Gina, was like, this isn't adding up because they can't serve her ex-husband, especially if it's her ex. Like that wouldn't work.
Absolutely. But again, you're building a case of like inconsistencies. Like, I don't know what bringing up the story is doing. Again, I just think they're putting
just bringing up that like, I think their point was in bringing that up. And I don't think they anticipated it was going to go down this road, but I feel like we could have stopped it before we got to that destination on the road, was that like Katie manipulates the truth and Katie's version of events don't line up with other like versions of events, and that she always has an excuse and there's always a story, but like deep down, like the math ain't mathin'. And this was honestly was a prime example. And I think we could have just said, Katie, what you're saying right there, like Emily could have said, as a lawyer, I can tell you they wouldn't have served your husband.
I mean, it's like, I think they could have easily just said what you just said.
Yeah.
Like you could have nipped it, but like I can name countless of examples of where you haven't told the truth, that time with you in Atlanta, like just naming different scenarios without going into it. But Emily took it a step too far. And I'm sorry. I know you're president.
I can't.
Founder of the Emily Simpson fan club, but watching her kind of question her about the custody of her kids was really yucky to me.
So Katie, did say like at the time she was basically like, she said she was homeless, which I wonder if it meant just like her ex-husband or husband had like kind of kicked her out. She hadn't found a place to live yet. She was trying to get, I want to know more about that story. I'm like,
I took it as it was an abusive relationship and she was in a women's shelter.
That's what I wonder, because she said she couldn't name the place that she was at. But that I wondered too, maybe when she said that she gave up her legal rights to the kids, I wonder if maybe there was some narcissism abuse, because a lot of times with that, it's hard because if you don't have like the bruises on your body, it's hard to prove it. So he could have maybe manipulated the situation and been like, there's no proof I've abused you. I'll end up with the kids. Give me legal custody and I won't pursue more, or we can revisit it at some point. But yeah, she said she was staying somewhere and she can't say where she was. So I would have to imagine that was a women's shelter, and she's not going to name the place because the whole point is to help these women be in hiding to be away from their abuser. Emily, though, like when she said that, I think Emily would have been like, this sounds like a situation I wasn't aware of. We don't need to continue going down. But she's like, did you lose legal custody or physical custody? Because legal custody is just the right to make decisions. But to lose physical custody, it's like, Emily, I love you. And I love that like the law. And honestly, your lawyer background came in so handy when we went to Jennifer. But this was a moment that we didn't need to keep pushing. And like that question, I don't think needed to be asked. And we find out she lost both physical and legal custody of her kids. She was able to see them on supervised visits. She never missed a visit. She's like tearing up talking about this. And then it's over. And they're like, we're going to take a break. And we see Heather go over and say, I didn't know that story. I didn't know that, like the way the kids were involved. I'm so sorry. Emily didn't do that. And I feel like I wish Emily would have gone over and said, I'm sorry too. This didn't need to go. Like we shouldn't have even gotten to that.
Still might potentially, hopefully, but it was just yucky. And I guess all I'm saying is I get with your explanation why they put Katie temporarily on trial, but I didn't think they needed to go to the length and the extent of what they did over the paparazzi photos. Like, I think there was
to prove their point. Like we were good. Yeah.
The condo, the whole like rental things that directly involve them, but things outside of Housewives that was before she was on the show. I'm just like, for what? Like, this just feels yucky to me. It feels like a witch hunt a little bit.
Also, like not to like make assumptions, but it does, like you said, seem like she's in like a little bit of an abusive situation. I have to wonder if part of this is why her one son chose to stay in Atlanta, because maybe too, like her ex has told her son things like right or wrong, but has possibly manipulated the son into thinking that like his mom isn't stable, or his mom, like, you hear really, really sad stories when there is any type of abuse involved. And like, I just feel like it didn't need to get to that point. And now I'm like, yeah, like
No.
it makes you be like, feel really sorry for Katie because this is really a lot more layered than any of us were aware of.
Yes.
It wasn't just like, I think the story she's telling is protecting her son and her family by saying he just wasn't in a spot where he wanted to make changes. I see he comes and visits me on the breaks and I see him once a month. Like, I think there's probably a little bit more to the story. I
Yes,
also
there's
think
definitely a lot more to the story. Like parental alienation is a real thing.
for
Like,
sure. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, I'm like, Tamra could have, I think Tamra was, this would have been a really great spot for Tamra to win back a little bit of like humanity points with the audience by saying like, I like Emily, I see what you're trying to do. You've proved your point. Like, let's end this here. We don't need to be questioning a parent's custody as someone who has dealt with that. Like, this isn't part of her story that got brought up on the show. We don't need to go
exactly.
down this road. Like,
That's
it
nothing
wasn't part
to
of the
do with this
storyline.
season. That's the thing. Like you said, they did it to bring up inconsistencies and basically say she's a liar and not to be trusted. But they didn't need to go there. That just was yuck. It was not needed.
It
It
kind
just,
of defeated their purpose
I
because like
agree. Then
you
we have more
proved,
sympathy.
yeah, you proved she was a liar, but now I feel bad for her. And I think you went too hard. And it's like, oh yeah, you proved she was a liar, but poor Katie. So then we switched to Jen. And I'm like, oh, Jen, like, well, one, Jen lives in like, she reminds me of Lydia, who's like, I live in a world of like fairies and sugar plums. And it's just like, you're like, okay, well, that's not the real world. And the rest of us are like having to get a paycheck to feed our kids, to like pay our mortgage. And it's like, Jen just doesn't know how to be an adult. And even as she was explaining the story with Matt, like her version of it,
And
she's like,
just not understanding how immunity works. I'm like, girl,
yeah,
I went to the school of Law and Order SVU. Like, we know if you listen to any crime podcast, watch Dateline, anything, you have an understanding of what immunity. They wouldn't give him that if he wasn't offering information. Like, duh. Like,
yeah, it's not
then
like,
why
oh, you're
wouldn't you ask
innocent.
him
Here's
why?
like immunity isn't given to innocent people who are just helping a case. Like, yeah, he used that as leverage. And like when she was saying that his friend Matt was like, well, I had to use, why am I blanking on her? Ryan? She's like, he had to use Ryan's account because Matt didn't have a BOA, a Bank of America account. Well, he could have just opened one. Like, if he wasn't doing shady shit, he would have just opened an account. Like, that doesn't, the way Emily explained it too, like finally made sense. I think all of us were like, at what like level in which is Ryan involved?
And like, literally, I like how they put the article
As
and
Emily's talking about it, but like Emily
I
wasn't reading from an article. She just knew it. Yeah.
was like highlighting the points. I mean, that was where her lawyer expertise was really valid. And also just kind of calling out the fact that they would then get the money and they'd make the trip to these casinos and get them in chips before he cashes them out and then puts them in these accounts. Like,
Well, and Jen was saying like, oh, I shouldn't be going to Vegas. Like the women, like, I'm talking about how I don't have money. And Ryan's like, yeah, but you're not paying for it. And then she said on the show, and he said it too, that their friend pays for them to go. And then she's like, no, like we never got free trips from him. I'm like, you've already said that you did. Like we know that was the case.
and listen, I love Jennifer as a housewife.
You think she's a star?
You've heard me say this a few times. Like I've mentioned that. However, you are about to make the same mistakes that you regretted with your former divorce. You're not asking questions. Like, you need to have your own bag. Don't rely on this man who had ties. Like, his best friend is going to jail for this crime. And it's just, you be smarter than that. Like, I was with Gina where she's like, this is why I worry about you, because it's literally in your face as the ultimate red flag. And you're still like
defending it. It's not even like I can't think about that because like he provides for me and my kids. Like I almost would then I'd be like, well, that sounded sad, but I get it. But she's just like blatantly like ignoring it and defending it. I also felt like then she's like, well, I heard your in-laws fund your lifestyle. I want to be like, how is that any different than Ryan funding yours? Like, I don't know. I just like, to me, I was like, was that a dig?
I thought that was kind of a good dig.
I didn't, only because I feel like we've seen Shane's family, like clearly they're wealthy.
But like, he's not that big of a practicing lawyer. Like, Emily didn't deny it. She said nothing as they moved on to the next topic. So I just thought.
I mean, how do you think they lived in that big house while he was studying for the bar that he
Yeah.
was failing? And I don't think Emily was working part-time. Like I I don't know. I guess to me, I wasn't shocked by that because I'm like, I just kind of assumed there was family and money involved based off of like the lifestyle they have and the fact that like Ryan's home an awful lot for a lawyer. Lawyers usually have to worry about billable hours. They're not typically just chilling with the kids, and like the fact that he was like helping kids get ready for school while she was working out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess to me, I wasn't surprised by it, but maybe it hasn't just been like called out in that
It
manner.
hasn't been like discussed, but I think
Yeah.
people are scared to go head to head with Emily. Like, of
Well,
course,
we've
he's gonna
seen,
like
I
check
mean,
you. If anything, to me, he probably has a trust and
oh,
has
I'm
a big enough of a trust to where they can
Yeah.
live with it. But she probably did the right thing by not engaging. But an explosive part one, explosive in the ways that I wasn't expecting. I was not expecting things to go so hard and in on Katie.
Especially, I mean, she was the NC. I mean, again, I know they like when they do the seating, they don't know how the reunion's going to go, but I feel like for part one, it was really mostly Emily and Katie and Emily and Jen. And so it's sort of weird that like, why do we have Tamra and Shannon sitting so close to Andy when they like basically had a little snippet and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he said it was happy because those two seem to like potentially move forward. But it was we have at least 2 more parts to go. So I'm curious to see what they're going to also address because it feels like so much of the main storylines were addressed in this one episode. Between like, so I'm curious to see like what else. Obviously, we haven't gotten to the Johnny J of it all.
Say we have Alexis to come out.
That's probably going to be like part 2 is going to be all that.
I mean, the clip of Shannon saying, like, because Alexis was like, you stole my job. And she's like, I stole your job 10 years ago. I'm still here. Like, I was just like, good for you, Shannon. I actually, and then she said, how long did you practice? There's the door, Shannon Medora, and there was no door.
That was
Hey,
good.
That was good. Especially for
good.
Shannon. She usually falls flat on these.
That was good. That was good rehearsal.
Yeah.
You also practice delivering this message.
She delivered. Yeah.
She delivered. But okay, so that's like, let's say Johnny J is like all of part 2. What is part 3 going to be? Because
it's going to be Katie. Well, Katie and Gina already kind of reconciled. Gina was like, I'm sorry for saying it was a setup. I don't think that was the case.
Yeah.
I think it's going to ultimately be Jen, Gina, and Emily reconciling part 3. Jen is quick to forgive. That is like part of her nature, as we've seen with Tamra. I think possibly it's also going to be Tamra and Jen resolving and being back at a good spot because I think for whatever reason, Jen really wants Tamra as a friend.
I think she's just obviously a very forgiving person, but yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how they edit it. And
I don't think it's Katie and Heather.
I think there's something obvious that I'm missing, but I'm curious to see where it goes. I've heard Vicky Gumbelson mention like the future of the show. She doesn't feel like Heather should be on it. Do you agree with that? Like, what's your take on that?
So here's my concern. Teddy basically lives in the OC now. Teddy is up Tamra's ass. Vicky says Heather should be gone. And if Heather is gone, they will bring in Teddy. And I honestly, they could probably get 2 Teddys for the price of 1 Heather. So we know that like financially, this could be a pretty good move because it opens up more budget for the show. I do worry that Fancy Pants is done and Teddy's coming back. And here's my thing with Teddy. I don't think she was a good housewife the first time around. I used to think I don't think she's a terrible person. I've heard different things now. I'm like, oh, she could be possibly a terrible person. I just don't think we need another minion of Tamra. She's strong enough on her own. She has Emily as a friend. She doesn't need a minion. And like, I feel like that's how Teddy's going to come in.
I would be nervous for their brand personally.
Right. Like, they're going to have to fight at some point, right?
Yes. Or like, I just wouldn't want that. I mean, and people would say all the time, like, this isn't going to get out of the way or like whatever it may be, but that would just make me nervous. Like, we're all in on this together, and to jeopardize our friendship in any way and let people meddle in that feels
They're so smart though. They just know that means people are going to tune into the podcast more.
That's true. I could see her being more friend of, to be honest.
Yeah, but honestly, to me, Heather basically was a friend of. She was just getting main character perks and budget. Yeah.
And Vicky, our beloved Vicky, I think even though she's on like slightly, I feel like if you're gonna, I'm all for. I've said it multiple times of just bringing her back.
So she will only come back if she's full time. I don't think they'll do that. She's also said, someone DM'd me and reminded me that she still to this day has a hard time forgiving Bravo for the way they handled her mom.
Yes, that was like all over. There was like press on that.
Yeah.
But
So
I don't know. I think at the end of the day, what I've learned with interactions with these Bravo Labs is people just want to be liked. And they like the attention, they like the fame, and nothing would surprise me if it's the right dollar amount.
yeah, I think I'd agree with that. So we'll see. If I have to make a prediction, Teddy Mellencamp will be part of Real Housewives of Orange County next season.
Yeah,
And
I can see that. I can see that. And listen, say what you want about Teddy. She takes a lot of people would not take being disliked in stride like she does. I think she will relish in her haters and will lean into being the villain. Like, you guys don't like me. Let me give you a reason for you not to like me. I think she will relish in that a little bit.
Also, I will say, I mean, she really won me over at the Us Weekly thing when she was talking about how she's obsessed with mom talk and like she's gone down the rabbit hole of all of it, the fruity pebbles of it all. But then I sent her the spatula video and she was like, oh dear God, how did I miss this one? And how do I unsee this? And I was like, okay, you're not terrible.
She all right.
She all right. And it could be interesting.
It could be.
I mean, she basically is a housewife now. Like,
if you had Vicky on there, she hates Teddy. So like that alone would be entertaining.
Oh yeah, because Teddy implied that Vicky was there on January 6th in DC as part of like the group that started
even before that, she like really hated her. But
yeah, I think that was the nail in the coffin. That was like, okay, Vicky.
Of their friendship. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we got 2 more parts, and then we've probably got a good 10 months before we have any new OC episodes. So plenty of time for them to figure it out. But we will keep you guys updated on all the things as we keep hearing rumblings relating to cast shakeups. I think that's really going to be the only cast shakeup. I think Katie comes back, Jen comes back. Yeah, I think we probably swap out a Heather for a Teddy and call it a day. I don't know if I'd bring in too many more new people because I think we still need to give Katie some more time. And honestly, Jen's really coming into her own now too. I don't know if bringing someone else in would be the right move.
No, I'm curious to see what happens.
Well, we're curious to see if we get to 1,500 reviews.
Because I threw it out there, and
it isn't like I don't know how you picked the number. I like it. It's a nice whole round number. But we're currently at 1,150. We will need 350 more reviews in the next 6 weeks. I think 7 weeks. I think we can do it if we keep begging. So please, 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 if you have not done so already, hit 5 stars, leave us a review. It means the world to us, and make it a great day or don't. The choice is yours.